Chapter 27, Second City Envy. A native New Yorker like Joshua, who was raised in Forest Hills, Queens, before his parents moved 30 minutes north of Manhattan to the hilly, windy, Tudor-home-lined streets of Edgemont, New York, had no reason to be jealous of the Second City in Chicago. But he was. Second City, in his eyes, was a tougher city, who had given birth to the radio broadcaster legend and oral historian Laureate Studs Terkel, who put a spotlight on the wide spectrum of all Americans and their meaning of work to them, revealing the decent, dignified, poetic strain within Americans of all kinds when discussing something as intimate as their life's work, and his landmark book, Working. The rough and tumble streets of the south side of Chicago gave birth to street ball, floor general, warrior legends turned NBA championship winning maestros of the hardwood like Isaiah Thomas and Dwayne Flash Wade, who didn't back down to anybody. Chicago was a huge theater town, staging David Mamet plays up the wazoo, and also the Second City Improv Training Ground incubator of talent for the Belushi brothers, Harold Ramis, Tina Fey, Chris Farley, John Candy, and eventual writer-director-star Jon Favreau, too. Sweet Home Chicago was the Midwest muse for screenwriter-director great legend John Hughes, the Blues Brothers, and the killing floor for all the blues gunslinger greats who Jimi Hendrix borrowed from heavily, such as Albert King, Muddy Waters, and the sharecropper's son Done Good, who jacked off his guitar shaft like no other, Buddy motherfucking Guy. Also, let's not forget Joshua was a hardcore Knicks fan, so every winter growing up, he was left with no choice but to look up to Michael Jordan in enraged awe. As he lit up the garden like the tree at Rockefeller Center, despite Anthony Mason's best manhandling, mugging efforts. The late, great Bernie Mac hailed from Sweet Home Chicago, also, who Joshua admired for his big-time charisma, solid acting chops, and history of sucky jobs he had to endure, like driving a Wonder Bread truck through the south side of Chicago, when he was an aspirational stand-up comic who hadn't won the Miller Highlight Amateur Comic Competition just yet. In particular, Joshua loved how Bernie Mac didn't limit his joke-slinging to the comedy club stage, turning the bus or the subway in Chicago into his own performance space, the way Dice would launch into his act before a movie started playing in Westwood by UCLA, proving the world is your stage, like Shakespeare said back in the day. Joshua adopted a similar approach since becoming an unplanned stay-at-home comedian, using his Do It All Dad Year podcast as a platform to perform his topical jokes on how Michelle Obama claims it's racist now to flee from the south side of Chicago, acting as if the south side of Chicago, always the city's most violent part, was only one crepe food truck away from gentrification. Joshua would add, gentrification. You know, a liberal talk for less black people. The other day, I'm driving on the Deegan past the new Yankee Stadium, and I point to my daughter, "Look, Matilda, the new Yankee Stadium, the house that gentrification built." Joshua would also never shy away from sampling jokes at the local post office, where Joshua picked up his mail, aiming his comedic blast on the mayor of New York City, Mayor de Blasio, saying, "Did you know Mayor de Blasio's wife used to be a hardcore Park Slope lesbo, yet we're supposed to believe garlic breath converted her? Also, the mayor eats pizza with a fork and knife. So, can you really see de Blasio, a.k.a. Big Bird, burying his beak into his wife's slippery snatch with such sloppy abandon?" It sounds like a plausible theory to digest. Now, thanks to Mayor Puttsface, you can be fined $250,000 for using dehumanizing language on an illegal alien, such as no speak English? Who's translating these insults for one exactly? Now, an illegal alien in New York City gets a New York license to vote and a hate speech translator to bankrupt Hapu at a bodega in Flushing. And enough with banning ICE. Ban ICE. Because Homeland Security was so weapons of mass destruction years. Last, on the anniversary of Amy Winehouse's death, did Minnesota congressional rep Babyface Omar refer to the anniversary of her death on Twitter as something happened? To a Beehive horn-hiding Hebe who exploited the great Palestinian songbook for all it's worth? Can I get a holla for a big-time raise in the roof? I'm banned from Twitter for a reason, but I'm just getting started. Holla! Thank you very much! Joshua also took improv acting courses at Second City when he lived in LA and got to inhale Harrison Ford's assistant, practically whole, at a dark lit bar in Koreatown before David Chang got to drop F-bombs for a living on the Food Network, coming off as a super deep and light and cool in the process. Easily, Joshua's most sexually arousing karaoke bar performance was at a local karaoke joint down the street in Koreatown, was when he performed the song Soul Man by Sam and Dave, getting the random girls in the audience quite sticky steamy in the process, to the point where they were gyrating and shaking to his best Wilson Pickett Man and a Half. It's the other half that knocks women out. That's why I'm a man and a half impersonation. Prior, Joshua was used to sticking with his developing Baba O'Riley rendition, including various jump-heavy, but still barely leaving the ground windmill guitar strumming kicks. But The Who's most kick-ass, recognizable Teenage Wasteland homage song didn't rouse any of the ladies at the Townie Valley Bar at the Barrel in Sherman Oaks to get their sexual dance freak on, an attempt to win over his attention before either. In retrospect, Joshua realized he had what they call in show business stage presence. But back then, Joshua was just doing karaoke to get more comfortable performing in front of strangers, to make bombing in front of various open mic audiences throughout Studio City, Santa Monica, West Hollywood, and Venice Beach a tad less worrisome, daunting. In short, Joshua was forcing himself to become a less cerebral, worrisome, Jewy, neurotic bitch. At the same time, Joshua getting into karaoke, performing songs he loved, like Wanted, Wanted, Dead or Alive by Bon Jovi, or Roadhouse Blues by The Doors. I woke up this morning and I got myself a beer was a reflection of his inner rock star in a desperate dash to break on through to the other side, because like Richard Belzer, known more for his poker face, dry as cotton mouth witticisms on Law and Order Special Victims Unit, when he said all comedians are frustrated rock stars. Joshua also attended Lake Forest College for 2 years on the North Shore of Illinois, because he just wanted to get out of New York and try something new. But it really came down to him hooking up with some upperclassmen during his trip to the college, which influenced his decision the most. Joshua had an older platonic friend, Shannon, who had a place in downtown Chicago, and he enjoyed getting his puff on with his other hippie buds down there plenty. Yet what he really longed for was Chicago's city life in bars and clubs, such as Walter Payton's, which closed at 1:30 a.m., which sucks out loud long time for any native New Yorker. For all the talk of how progressive LA is, the last call is even earlier at a hard 1. Plus, all the girls in Chicago look like the prettiest faces from Indiana, which is fine, but failed to give Joshua sustained stiffage during his time in the Midwest either. The energy of Chicago wasn't on par with his dear Manhattan, not even close. It was impossible to not feel like an outsider when Joshua attended college for 2 years in the Midwest, knowing it was the first time he developed a heightened awareness of his Jewish brethren being a minuscule minority in this Christian country at large, learning most preferred to keep it that way. And boy, could those Midwest girls drink. I used to party with these girls from Illinois who would haul a case of Busch Light on each shoulder into their dorm room quad before hitting the bottle of Beam in honor of Kid Rock as the clock struck midnight to more Cheap Trick on the old school dorm CD player. And Joshua was no lightweight, accustomed to closing down bars at 4 in the morning back in Manhattan with his old school high school crew, never running out of breath as they maintained a steady stream of busting balls till they tore through dogs at Papaya King soon after. Did Joshua love Kanye West? Yes. But did he love Kanye more than the soulful, cinematic-powered lyricism of Notorious B.I.G.? Not even close. Did Joshua love Harold Ramis films like Ghostbusters and Groundhog Day? Yes. But he'd watched most Woody Allen films over any Harold Ramis film before he learned how Woody kept Polaroids of Sun Yi in his top sock drawer because her on the cover of Time Life magazine in tears wasn't enough. Did Joshua revere bands who hailed from Chicago, like the Smashing Pumpkins and Pearl Jam? Yes. But he revered bands and solo musical artists who hailed from New York City that much more, like Nasty Nas, the Beastie Boys, and Kiss. Bernie Mac was great in Joshua's eyes, but he was no Chris Rock, Eddie, Dice, or Keenan Ivory Wayans for that matter, who were raised in either New York City or Long Island, which is close enough. Overall, Joshua loved his New York heroes more because they exuded superior style, gravitas, and larger-than-life charisma, loaded personality. Only the island of Manhattan is capable of inspiring the most in his eyes. The prettiest, sexiest, most diverse collection of ladies populated the streets of Soho, the West Village, and parts of the Lower East Side. In NoHo, not off of Lakeshore Drive or on State Street, according to New York Pride incarnate Joshua. The only city he ever wanted to live in was Manhattan, not Chicago. Still, Manhattan could feel like a very lonely place at the bottom, and Joshua wasn't a big shot mocker just yet. Still, Chicago represented the American heartland, which was important to Joshua, especially knowing that those working artists who strived and thrived in the second city, compared to the more uppity elitist New Yorker Yentebrests, were a tad tougher than the rest.